I'd like to call this meeting to order. Today is Monday, July 24th, 2014. We're meeting for the purposes of the regular scheduled meeting of the Elmhurst City Council. At this time, I would invite Troop 82 from Emmanuel Lutheran up front to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Take it away, gentlemen.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. Clerk Spencer, I'd ask you to call roll to establish quorum.
Gutenkopf. Here. Deuter.
Here.
Dunn. Absent. Leader.
Here.
Polumsky.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Hipskin. York.
Here.
Levin.
Here.
Healy. Absent. Honquist.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Mulliner.
Here.
Wagner.
Here.
12 present, 2 absent.
12 present, 2 absent. We have a quorum. We are in session. Agenda item number 3, written communications from the public. At this time, is there anybody in the audience who has any written communications that they wish to submit? Anyone? If so, please approach and submit to Clerk Spencer. Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 4, public forum. This is an opportunity during our meeting for any member of the public to address the City Council on any item they wish. We ask out of respect that the work we have to do here, and also out of the respect for the other folks who want to speak, that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. If you go over 3 minutes, I will give you a gentle reminder and ask you to wrap it up. That having been said, Clerk Spencer, is there anybody this evening who is signed up for public forum?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I'll start with Claude Pagash, 566 West Gladys.
Mr. Pagash, I think you know the drill. If you approach the microphone, name and address for the recording.
My name is Claude Poggart, 566 West Gladys. I had the opportunity this week of talking with somebody who has lived in this town for 69 years. When she was a child in this town, the town flooded. When she was a teenager, the town flooded. When she was an adult, the town flooded. Now that she's in her golden age, shall we say, it floods. You come into this room and you see a lot of pictures on the wall. A lot of mayors, a lot of legislators sat in your place. And the one thing she did indicate, though, is over that 69 years, flooding continued, but in the process, we've got new City Hall, parking garages, fire stations. But that flooding just keeps on coming. And then we listen to Public Works. Their solution. The resident will put in rock gardens. He'll put in tanks below his driveway. And if he doesn't have enough pervious land, he's going to be fined at $13.55 a cubic foot. I hope everybody understands what a cubic foot is in gallons. See, we seem to have something out of place in this whole town. The problem is, it's the resident. He's responsible. If he didn't live here, there wouldn't be flooding. But then I go driving around this town and I see acre after acre of parking lot, and I don't hear anything from Public Works or any alderman saying we're going to put retention under those parking lots because they're pervious, even though for all the years I've lived, I never heard that they were. See, it's the resident. He's the solution. He's responsible. And what does he get out of it after his house floods? Administration goes down there and says, "Oh, we're sorry we used your basement for retention, but there's a dumpster at the curb.
Mr. Pagash, I'd ask you to wrap up your comments.
You can put your personal objects in there, but don't forget to pay the taxes, because we got some more parking garages to build."
Next, Amy Leonard and Abby Moffett, 182 North York.
Good evening. My name is Amy Leonard, and this is Abby Moffett, and we are two interns from Citizen Advocacy Center at 182 North York. And we just wanted to extend an invitation to any member of City Council and any member of the public who wants to join us for what we like to call Democracy Night on Thursday, where you can come, and it's a free event. There will be some food, and we will discuss with you what we do at CAC and specifically what we have done this summer as interns. And Abby will give you more details.
Intern night will be this Thursday from 6:30 to 8:30 at Cafe Amano. And around 7:15, Amy and I and the other interns that have been here in Elmhurst all summer will give a brief synopsis of what good government initiatives we've been working on this summer. And a few of them have been in Elmhurst with Amy. And there'll be light refreshments and some appetizers. So please join. Anyone is welcome.
Thank you.
Tamara Brenner, 137 North Caroline.
Tamara Brenner, 137 North Caroline. So on tonight's consent agenda number 12, 6.12, we're going to be authorizing $1.5 million, I think it is, in a sales tax sharing agreement between the city and one of the auto dealerships. Again, I'm a little confused about sharing sales taxes and sales tax rebates, which is what's listed on the bottom of the contract page as sales tax rebate. Now, when I go to buy a car, which is actually something I plan to do in the next few weeks, I pay a bunch of sales tax. I pay a bunch of sales tax, right, as the customer, that I thought would go to the city and the state and whichever other places are levying sales tax on me. I'm paying that. The dealership isn't paying it. The dealership collects it and forwards it on, and they incur some administrative costs to handle that sales tax, but the customers are the ones who are paying the sales tax. So how is it that the dealership, or whatever business, can get a sales tax rebate for money they didn't pay? I paid it. I don't understand what claim a private business has on sales tax monies. Now, we're told we want to shop local so that sales tax dollars can stay within the community. But what incentive is there for me to shop local if I'm seeing the municipalities giving away the monies that I paid in taxes to private enterprises so that they can renovate their businesses? Renovation of businesses, just like renovation of homes, ought to be done with the regular income streams that those businesses have. So it seems to me that the sales tax rebate or sharing is like a windfall income stream to the dealership, and I wish you guys could explain to me why it's the city's duty to provide that cash benefit to the company rather than to provide what I thought governments are supposed to do, which is to provide good public infrastructure. Elmhurst also has a benefit of great location, so we should have great location and good infrastructure. That should be good enough to be bringing businesses here. Additionally, I thought we were going to have on the agenda tonight in the same vein another incentive, so-called incentive, regarding the new development at the old Waverton Hotel site. I was at the Finance Committee last week, and I was pretty disgusted again at the conversation that went down. I watched the city manager and two of the three aldermen there basically fall all over themselves to give away $500,000 to that private business. That business is saying they're going to have a 9% profit on the project without public money, and with public money it'd be over 10% or 11% or something. I heard one of the aldermen basically inflate the potential benefits of that project to the community, like he had to convince the developer's representative what these great benefits were going to be. I questioned the accuracy of the projections of indirect sales taxes. And I heard the developer say basically that Mariano's got some money from the city, so why shouldn't they? I wish, maybe one of these days I will actually total up all the money I've watched the city council give away in the 4.5 years I've been coming here. There's been numerous agreements like this, and I really think we should be offering other other things to businesses, not cash. We should offer them our location and really good infrastructure. Use that money that you should be taking into the public treasury for good infrastructure. Thanks.
Mike Burfiend, 703 Washington.
Good evening, Mike Burfiend, 703 Washington. Thank you for your time here tonight. There's just a few points I'd like to make, most of which I think I've talked to some of you about, but I'm here to talk about flooding. Me and some of my neighbors have been to some of the park board meetings and the school board meetings, and there seems to be, a lot of finger pointing going on right now. So what I'm asking is maybe we can remove some of the politics of this particular issue, try to just work together to get a resolution if we can. One of the other points was that I learned is that the subcommittee around the particular resolution as it relates to the parks and the schools is, these committee meetings are not happening very often. They said something like 3 times in the last 14 months. Well, that's true or not, I honestly don't know. So what I would encourage you to do is, meet more regularly, and then potentially open up those meetings to the public so we can hear exactly what we're, what sides and what are the oppositions, if any, there are to that plan. So those are the things I wanted to point out. And then I would also encourage the council as a whole to continue to look at other options, right? So I think that this plan is solid from Burke. I think it's going to help tremendously as it relates to the flooding, but maybe take a step back and look at this more globally, right? So over the next, this might work for 5, 10 years, but over the next 20, 30, 40 years, are there things we can do with our infrastructure as it relates to sewers? Are there things we can do with our roads as it relates to, permeable type pavement? Continue to look at those things because I think in the long run, we're going to need everything to come to bear to actually solve this issue. So appreciate your time. Thank you.
Mike Jasek, 745 South Washington.
Good evening, Mike Jasek, 748 South Washington. I'm here to discuss flooding as well. We've been going to many Park District Board meetings and school board meetings in the last few months. And the message I'm getting from those two boards is that they're on board to work with the city council. They are not the roadblock, they are not the problem. They're waiting for the city council to take the lead on the issue. And I'd like to know when the city council will take the lead on this issue, because the flooding is not going away. And if 2 out of 3 boards are saying the same thing, I'd like to know what this board's saying. Thank you.
Tracy Flesher, 736 South Washington.
Tracy Fleischer, 736 South Washington. Like many of my neighbors, I'm here to let the city leaders know of my continued support of the floodwater mitigation projects, and I thank you all for your efforts and implore you to continue everything that you've been doing, but to take action a little more quickly. The Elmhurst Independent just published a front page story rating stormwater management and flooding as one of the most disliked things residents have about living in Elmhurst, and it was at a record high percentage. It's also rated one of the 3 biggest problems that Elmhurst will face in the next 5 years, again at a record high by people living in our town. The level of stormwater management service was rated as not enough, was at a staggering percentage of 52.43%, again by our residents. To me, that shows that it is evident that I'm not the only one, along with my neighbors and a lot of people in this town, unhappy with the progress the city has made to date. The flooding issues have been a problem for years, and they are only going to get worse. Record high ratings should tell you that the residents of this town see stormwater management as a major problem. We'd like you to start seeing this as a priority for Elmhurst as well. Thank you.
Michael McCon, 741 Washington.
Good evening. Mike Macon, 741 Washington. So I'm also here to support my neighbors, the ones on Washington as well as the ones throughout Elmhurst. Fortunately, I'm in a house that does not flood on Washington Street. But again, I do want to support these communications that have been happening between the city council and between the park boards and the school boards. It seems to me, my understanding is that there's not a lot of, there may be communication, but it might not be sticking in with some of these groups. So I just urge you, the next 4 weeks, it seems like we're coming to a head here. I'd like to urge you guys to make sure that everything gets done and we make the right decisions. I think sometimes it's very easy to make the simple decisions and problems go away, but I think if you really focus on some of the more complex ones, you guys can really create something special here for Elmhurst. So that's it.
Kevin Graff, 233 Cayuga.
Hi, my name's Kevin Graff, and I live on Cayuga Street, and I'm kind of here representing the Cayuga people that back up, as well as back up to York Commons. I am too talking about the stormwater management and specifically about the York Commons area, and just to urge you to continue to look at your options there. You know, you're bringing water back into my backyard from other people's areas. I want to help them get their problems fixed, so we all need to come together to try to work that out. But obviously, it does, you know, present an issue for us that where we don't flood in certain areas, and now you're moving water into our areas. So we'd like to see more progress on that. Some more detailed information about what can be done back there. Some people aren't concerned about aesthetics, but I back up to the park, which is beautiful right now. Now you're gonna make it a pit for where you're gonna funnel water in from another area at some point in time. So I would appreciate you to consider some of those aesthetics when you're doing it, like the power lines that are behind our house, as well as you know, where it starts and ends on the lot line. Because of our lots are just like on Washington, they're small. They're only 60 by 120. They're 150 on the other side on Crescent. So there's more room to do some of these things that some of the other residents have talked about, like the underwater basins and stuff. I don't have room in my yard to do that. I have a huge elm tree or silver maple in my backyard. Many of us have mature trees in our yards. So what am I supposed to do, knock that down to put one of those in to try to help out with taking care of additional stormwater management? So I just urge you to continue working, but also think about the residents that you are impacting if that decision is to say, yes, we're going to do this stormwater management in our parks and our schools as well. Thank you.
And the last person I have that signed in is Kathleen Sullivan, 133 Pine.
Kathleen Sullivan, 133 Pine Street. This week, Thursday, July 24th, will be the 4-year anniversary of the 2010 flooding that brought so many people in Elmhurst to their knees, and have been coming to city council and schools and parks and very interested in the plan even when they're not here. So I'm glad that they're coming and helping you keep it all in mind, because it is a very important issue, like they said, to the residents of this town and the long-term well-being of this town. Really, you know, you're building a parking garage so that people will come to Elmhurst to go to restaurants and do all kinds of things, but they're not going to stay living here if they can't, if their homes are serving as detention basins for the city of Elmhurst like mine does. They're just not going to do it. It affects children, it affects families, it affects grown-ups. I've lost so many neighbors in the last 4 years. I can count more city projects where we've given money, $20 million to build a parking garage. We've got $1 million we gave to Mariano's. We want to give $500,000 across the street there to a vendor that one of the aldermen here, I was at the zoning commission meeting when he said, when they debated about just little thing like parking restrictions, and the vendor didn't even tell the truth about to whom they were renting, because it was impacting their decision, and it did impact their decision. It was published in the Elmhurst Independent, and it was an accurate story. I sat there. It was an accurate story. And that same vendor is going and saying, oh, well, our cost estimates are high, and our revenue estimates are out many years out, and so we need $500,000 of city money. That's Paragon, who's building over at the hotel. They also want to send their stormwater to Addison Creek. That floods my house. Okay? So it's all really serious, and it all ties together. And I think you guys have a lot better things to do with $500,000 here and $1.5 million there. So thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, that concludes those that signed in.
Okay, that covers everyone who signed in this evening. Is there anybody else who wishes to address the council that did not have an opportunity to sign in on the sign-in sheet that was at the back of the room? If so, raise your hand. Seeing none, we'll move on to announcements. Agenda item number 5, announcements. Oh, Alderman York.
Thank you, Your Honor. Again, just as a reminder, this coming Friday, July 25th, is the second annual Elmhurst Cycling Classic. The races are going to be going from 11 o'clock until about 8 o'clock in the evening. We're expecting several hundred participants and several thousand spectators. The weather's supposed to be 80 degrees this year, not 100. So we're hoping that people come out and watch the event, come out and participate in the Olympia Chiropractic Family Fun Ride, and hope Elmhurst enjoys the day. Information can be found at elmhurstcyclingclassic.com. Thank you.
Alderman Palomsky.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 2 announcements. One.
Alderman Palomsky, could you pull your mic a little closer?
Yes, I would like to ask everybody to mark your calendars. All are invited to a meeting August 5th, Sustainable Stormwater Solutions for Homeowners. And this is put on by Cool Cities Coalition. There's a speaker, Jim Kleinwacher, Land Protection Specialist with Conservation Foundation, will be sharing information on how to reduce collection of stormwater on their property, helping to alleviate flooding and supporting the health of our environment. So learning about rain gardens, rain barrels, permeable pavement, and cisterns and bioswales. So that is at Elmhurst Public Library, August 5th at 7 p.m. And the second announcement, would like to invite all to another open house for the North York Plan, July 30th, 6 to 8 p.m. at Elmhurst City Hall. House Levine will be discussing where we are in working on the plan. We had a meeting with the steering committee, and we're making progress. We'd like more information and sharing information on the North York plan. You can also go to the city website if you would like to take a look. There's a link from the city's website to the North York plan information.
Better microphone.
Thank you.
Alderman Palomsky, I think there was a Harley Davidson driving by when you gave the date and time. Could you give that again for that last one?
July 30th, 6 to 8 p.m. at City Hall.
Okay. Any other announcements? Alderman Bram?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I echo Alderman Palomsky's announcement for the North York Plan Open House, but I also wanted to announce that the City of Elmhurst, the police, are accepting applications for the fall 2014 Citizens Police Academy. I have been through it myself many years ago. It's a great program. It allows the residents as well as people who work in the City of Elmhurst to meet one night a week at the Elmhurst Police Station and learn about the intricacies of the police department. It's a great program, so I encourage everybody to sign up for that. And then the next thing I would actually ask possibly if we have any announcement on the work that is going a little bit west of 83 and North Avenue, the bridge work there, when that will be complete. Do we have any completion date there? Because it seems to back up North Avenue and 83 drastically.
Okay, City Manager Grabowski will address that during his comments.
Thank you.
Any other announcements? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. At this time, is there any portion of the consent agenda that anyone would like to have removed for potential additional comment or questions? Alderman York.
Thank you, Your Honor. 6.12.
6.12. Anything else that anybody wants to pull or comment to as it relates to our current consent agenda? Seeing none, I will ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda minus item 6.12. Motion to approve. Alderman Deuter with a motion, Alderman Palomsky with a second. Clerk Spencer.
Deuter.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Tipskin.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Healy. He's absent. Arnquist.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Olener.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Dunn. Absent. Leader.
Aye.
12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent.
12 ayes, 0 nays. That motion passes. Consent agenda is approved, minus item 6.12. And item 6.12 is an ordinance. Clerk Spencer, I would ask that you read the ordinance.
An ordinance authorizing the execution of a sales tax sharing agreement between the City of Elmhurst and Larry Roche Chrysler Jeep Dodge LLC.
Okay, to put this before the council, I'll ask for a motion to approve the ordinance as read. Alderman York with a motion. Alderman Deuter with a second. Alderman York, this is a report, an ordinance that was a result of a report out of your committee. So I think you have something to add.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yeah, I just wanted to clear up a couple things in the ordinance and then move on to just making a couple minor changes to some dates. So first, I'd like to bring to everybody's attention that in Appendix A, the company, which is Larry Roche Chrysler Jeep Dodge LLC, is the current lessee of the property where the commercial vehicles are going to be sold, and not the owner of the property that is being redeveloped at 150 West Grand. The agreement before us is tied to the sale of commercial vehicles, which is what is planned at 150 West Grand Avenue currently, and what that property is being redeveloped for. There is flexibility in the agreement to allow a change in the location for the sales and service of those commercial vehicles so long as, and I repeat, so long as those vehicles continue to be sold in Elmhurst. If for some reason those vehicles are sold at the original Roche location or perhaps a new location in Elmhurst, everything would be fine for the purposes of this agreement. If Roche moves sales of those commercial vehicles out of Elmhurst during the 15-year term of the agreement, the recoupment provision would apply. So I'd like to make sure that the city attorney agrees with my layman's explanation of this part of Appendix A of the ordinance.
I do.
Okay.
That is the proper explanation.
Okay, thank you. Secondly, I'd like to identify a couple of date items that I think need to be addressed in Appendix A of the ordinance, and would ask that changes to those be made under the auspices of a Scrivener's error. In Section 3, term, on page 4 of Appendix A.
Sorry, page 4?
Yes. In Section 3, under term, on page 4, the very last date of 2029 should be changed to 2028.
Okay.
And this is due to the fact that the 15th annual period will conclude on 12/31 of 2028. And it is a 15-year agreement.
Okay.
Also in Section 5C on page 5, the year of 2030 reference should be changed to 2029 for the very same reason that 2029 will be the 16th annual period, and as such is not covered in this agreement. So I would propose that those changes that I just referenced be made on the ordinance before the ordinance is executed, which is allowed per the ordinance in Section 2 on page 3.
Okay.
Specifically.
Clerk Spencer, do you have notes of those? And I checked with the city manager, or I'm sorry, city attorney Storino. Addressing those Scrivener errors is appropriate, no motion necessary. So we'll change those as noted. Alderman York, any other comments before I open it up?
No.
Okay. Comments or questions as it relates to this ordinance? Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Alderman York, for that summary of changes. I myself had questions with the city attorney earlier today about those very items in the agreement. I just want to make it short and brief. I did not agree with the report on this item. I think $1.5 million, at least in my mind, was not justified on why $1.5 million is needed. Why that is what I've been calling the magic number when we talk about sales tax incentives and TIF funds and everything of that nature. So I can't move forward, or I don't agree with moving forward with this ordinance for the reason of the total dollar amount. And one of the major other sticking points was the duration. Our sales tax incentive policy actually says that 10 years should be the duration, with exceptions to the rule being considered for 15. It seems like most recently we're making the 15 the rule and not the exception any longer, according to our own policy. And I don't agree with going against our policy. I think it's a good one. I don't see the rationale of going past what the policy states. I appreciate your attention. So those are the two major sticking points with this ordinance. As I said when we discussed this as a report, it hasn't been justified to date. Why 1.5? And as Alderman York actually just clarified of the statement of if they move inside of Elmhurst, they wouldn't violate this agreement. That actually has concern for me too. So we are investing in them rehabbing a facility that if they decide to move their sales away from this location, we possibly could have a new tenant saying, well, we need monies to rehab this facility for a totally different purpose. So if we're going to, and I think a lot of it, I do commend the committee because a lot of the ordinance does state some really good things, clawback provisions in here, but allowing them to move inside the city of Elmhurst and abandoning this facility within that time period and not enacting the clawback, that essentially has the great potential of us having another vacant property that was recently rehabbed, that we gave significant sales tax incentive to, and then we're back at square one. So I hope you take what I've just stated in consideration on this vote for this ordinance. I cannot be in support of this for those top three reasons. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. I do just have a question, and I don't know if it can be clarified tonight, but I was just looking for the document. I thought that part of the costs that were presented to us included an acquisition cost. And I heard Alderman York clarify that the dealer is going to be leasing the property. Are they leasing from a different business arm, but it's within the same umbrella corporation? Might be worth, I mean, I just wanted to understand that this, this entity does have a further investment, and I want to clarify whether we know if they're contemplating a relocation within Elmhurst.
Alderman York.
To answer your question about related parties, it's in the definitions of company, and so it clearly does go into that they are, related parties. But so that, that's the answer to that, and it's in the definitions here. I'm looking for it right now.
Okay.
And any intent that we have heard of a change in location?
No, I think this is a little bit unique in the fact that the Roche family of businesses has a couple locations here in town, and that it just allows them the flexibility to, if another opportunity were to arise, maybe a new line or something along those lines, or for whatever purposes, they could bring the commercial truck sales back to their Alpha dealership or somewhere around there if they were to acquire some more land around there, or someplace else in town, and that would free up that thing. But then, to Alderman Bram's point, You know, you can't look into the crystal ball and say, well, if somebody does that, there's automatically going to be a request for some more additional money. We don't know that for a fact, and that's something that we have. The city council has the right to look at that at any time anybody brings a business proposition. You know, when we looked at this, we're looking at a business that's not here currently that will, over the course of this agreement, generate $4.5 million of sales taxes that the city simply doesn't have today. Or it wouldn't have the opportunity to earn those over the next 15 years. So I understand $1.5 million is a lot of money, but the other side of it is if, and I think you noted it yourself very eloquently when we were talking about this, there is competition amongst communities for these very coveted businesses. And if we don't elect to at least listen to them and talk about the opportunities, they're likely to go elsewhere. And I think the other thing, you know, that the committee talked about, as you're well aware of, is just the redevelopment of a pretty decrepit-looking piece of land on Grand Avenue. So,
Okay. Alderman Hipskin.
So, working on this ordinance, there were a couple of things. This is highest and best use for this property. As Alderman York mentioned, this piece of property right now hasn't been doing anything for 7 years. If they're not moving in here, I don't know, is it gonna be speculating that it's gonna be a semi-truck, you know, parking ground for a while? That's what it was for a couple of years. And to the point of 15 years versus 10, well, in my experience, we have 15 years. We've extended this this incentive out 15 years. That's better for Elmhurst, not worse. I mean, that is, they're locked into this location or within Elmhurst for 15 years, not 10 years. So it is, it really defies logic why we wouldn't want, I'd take 20 years if we could lock them in for 20 years. So the longer the period on this, the better off we are.
Okay. Alderman Bram, then I'll go to Alderman Deuter.
Thank you. In regards to the comment made of they're not currently here, this dealership is here. They're currently dealing commercial trucks out of their current location. The rationale for them to move and purchase this additional property is because A, they lost their lease, and B, they want to expand their commercial dealings within Elmhurst. And I do give them kudos, and I don't want to be misunderstood. I'm not saying we shouldn't give an incentive, because as I believe it was Alderman York who stated that any car dealership, be commercial or otherwise, is very much in high demand, and I would hate to lose them to another community, like has happened when Roche moved to Bensonville across the street years ago. So I wouldn't want that to occur. The problem I have with this being the 15 years and the 1.5 million, at least in my speculation by looking at the numbers, was by increasing the duration to 15 years. I agree with Alderman Hipskin. It keeps them within the city of Elmhurst in this proposed ordinance for 15 years, which is better than 10. But according to what the numbers showed me, 15 years guaranteed, at least from their projections, that they would have a higher likelihood of earning the full incentive of $1.5 million. And if it was at 10 years, they would have to reach a higher goal and jump over a higher bar to reach that $1.5 million incentive. I would ask that the committee remove that provision of allowing them to move within the city of Elmhurst and not feel the repercussions of a clawback provision. The reason is because this is the only one agreement that we've done, to my knowledge, that allows this type of opportunity. I'm not sure what makes this deal different than the rest, but a clawback should be a clawback, not an exception to the rule for the clawback, just in case they do so. And I do agree with Alderman York's statements. I don't have a crystal ball if Roche leaves this rehab lot. that the next potential owner would want or come to the city for additional incentive. But I will tell you that if they take the money today and every year going forward, if they decide to leave before the 15-year, the clawback should be just like all the other agreements and in place. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, I am not necessarily, I know that there is some flexibility that may be appropriate in this case because this is a company that's already here and they have moved some of their sales around. My question is, one of the things we discussed in committee is that we established a base, and that base was pulling from their existing location. And the concept was that the new location would have a new ID and a new sales tax ID. And so it would be very easy to track the sales made at their new location. I haven't given this enough thought. I am concerned if we do not talk about the incentive for that specific location, would have a hard time identifying increased sales and how the rebate would work.
Alderman York?
Yeah, I think there is mention of the tax ID locator in this ordinance, so that will always stay with the commercial vehicle sales.
But probably not if they were at, regardless of the location where those sales are booked?
That would move with it, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Alderman Gutenkopf.
I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty locating the exact language that allows them to move within Elmhurst. Perhaps Alderman York could help me find that.
Alderman York, you know where in the ordinance Alderman Gutenkopf's question can be addressed? Don, you have access to it?
Mr. Mayor, I know it was on page 12. I don't know if it's in any other location.
I think it's number 7.
Yeah.
Section 7.
Oh, I don't know. Oh, sorry, page 7.
Don, it's in.
If company ceases its expense or relocates.
Yeah, the clawback is only, I think Alderman Bram is correct, the clawback only comes into effect if it ceases its expanded operations or relocates expanded operations to outside the city of Elmhurst. So if they move within the city of Elmhurst, it won't activate the clawback.
Okay, Alderman Gutenkopf.
I'd like to make a motion to amend paragraph 7, city recruitment, that currently reads, if company ceases its expanded.
Sorry, Alderman Gutenkopf, I know I'm having trouble hearing you. I'd ask you.
Apologize. I said I'd like to make an amendment. I'd like to make a motion to amend paragraph 7 on page 7 titled City Recoupment to strike sentence 2 where it says to a location outside the city of Elmhurst, so that the sentence would read, if company ceases its expanded operations or relocates its expanded operations during the term of this agreement. So I want to strike that phrase, to a location outside of the city of Elmhurst.
All right, hold on a second, please. If company
Just a point of clarification. That's
cannot hear
the
her.
first sentence, right?
Yeah, it's the first,
Yeah.
second line.
It's the
Second
first
line,
sentence,
first
second line.
sentence. But, Don, so she said, if company ceases
What about the paragraph above?
its expanded operations or relocates its expanded operations during the term. That's right. In effect, the same thing.
All right.
So,
He wants me to read
right,
it.
if the
Well, if it
company
closes,
ceases
it
expanded
goes dark,
operations
it's
or
expanded
relocates its
operations.
expanded
She wants
operations
that.
Or relocates
to a
I guess,
location.
I don't know, it might be
Company
redundant,
ceases
but I think it's
expanded
okay, Mayor.
operations.
I mean, it doesn't substantively change, it may be clarified.
I can't think of an
What does she
Mayor's
want it
asking
replaced?
whether or not it might be redundant, ceasing operations at the expanded, operations might be the same as relocating. I can't think of an example right now, but even if it's redundant, I don't think it's a problem.
All right, so I have a motion to amend the ordinance, striking,
To a location outside.
first sentence, second line, to a location outside the city of Elmhurst. Yes, Alderman Gutenkopf?
That is correct.
Okay, so we have a motion to strike that portion of the ordinance, paragraph 7. Can you, oh, well, I have a, here, you know what? Give this to Patty. I'll read with Don. All right, do we have a second on that motion? We have a second by Alderman Bram. So, a motion and a second to amend the city ordinance O-23-2014, removing from paragraph 7, page 7, under city recoupment, first sentence, if company ceases its expanded operations or relocates its expanded operations, striking to a location outside the city of Elmhurst, and just continuing the sentence with during the term of, et cetera, et cetera. We have a motion and a second to strike that. Is there a second place to do it as well? Hold on one second. There might, balance, would that make sense?
Way to do find and replace.
Well, you know what?
Yeah.
We have a motion.
Yeah.
We have a motion of what Alderman Gutenkopf has asked for. Any discussion, comments, questions on the motion? Alderman Palomsky.
I have a question, thank you, and I don't know, if perhaps somebody from the committee could share this information. Did the committee discuss this provision where it applies to this business would still retain, would not have the clawback provision if they left the property, but only if they left Elmhurst?
No, we,
All right. Alderman York.
No, we did not.
I'm sorry. I know that there was a clawback discussed, Alderman
Yes.
Palomsky, and this is something that, at the direction of the committee, clawback was put in, but this is unique to this situation. Alderman Levin.
Well, I guess I'm a little confused because I don't, if the standard provision is that you get the clawback if you move from the location, and I think I understand some of the logic why it might be different, but the city didn't make, the committee didn't make that determination, then how did it get into the ordinance?
I think, I think with respect to,
Hold on one second. Okay. All right. Don, you wanted to
I just
add?
wanted to say that I don't think, Alderman Levin, you can say that anything is particularly boilerplate or specific. I think each one of these sales tax agreements are a bit unique in and of themselves, and particularly the clawbacks are unique. In our agreements, we always have a clawback. I mean, if you went to other places, you might not even see a clawback. So I don't know if that helps, but I think each one of them has its own little nuances of the deal.
And I would also point out that this is, the clawback itself is defined based on the fact that this is a sales tax related, and we want to follow the sales tax versus, let's say, a property tax. Alderman Levin.
Well, and I guess there's two parts to my question. One is to see how it got in there, and I want to state what I think would be the understanding of why it should be in there, but I'd like to have some discussion, and that is, as you say, the incentive is to bring a sales tax producing entity or to keep an expanded sales tax producing entity in the city. If it moved to another location, assumedly it would not get another incentive, and knowing what car dealers do with these, they would put another line in there, which I guess you get the benefit then of two. But so I can support it, I just am concerned that I didn't understand how it got in there, and I don't know if that is something that is done in other communities or that.
Well, let me, City Manager Grabowski, the Napleton contract was kind of like this, similar to this?
Yes, it was.
This provision?
This provision, yes.
Okay, so this isn't the first time we've put this in? Alderman York?
I just wanted to address Alderman Levin's comments. The committee did discuss the clawback and the recoupment, specifically around the fact that if they ceased operations or took their operations outside of Elmhurst, that the provision would kick in. I think it was during the going back and forth between the company's attorneys and the city's attorneys that this came up. And as I mentioned in my comments earlier, it kind of revolves around the fact that they have a couple different locations here in town now, and who knows in 5 or 7 years what the landscape in general is going to be. Do they want to move the commercial truck sales back nearer the Alpha dealership and use the rejuvenated property for another line, as you suggest, or something along those lines? So long as those commercial sales don't leave the city of Elmhurst, there's really no difference with regard to what set of doors or where the computer's located that's turning in the sales reports for the city. So I understand that it's different, but it was like this in the case of Napleton as well. So.
Thank you.
Alderman Gutenkauf.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. But isn't the initial impetus for this request to remodel this existing location? If we're asking the citizens of Elmhurst to take the sales tax money that they're paying to this dealership that we could be using for other purposes within the city and giving it to the dealer so that they can remodel this existing location, then why wouldn't we want that money to stay at that spot? If they want to move their operation somewhere else, that's great. But if you think they're going to move in 7 years, then let's make it a 7-year deal. If you think they're going to move in 10 years, let's make it a 10-year deal. I mean, the whole point of the incentives is to build up this location, to make it something that it's not, so that this business that's asking for this money can stay there. So, I mean, if we're starting to speculate that they're not going to do it, then let's link the money to the site where they're asking for the assistance.
Just a reminder to the council, let's try to keep this part of the discussion to the amendment, which I believe, Alderman Gutenkauf, your intent is to remove the provision that would allow them to relocate within Elmhurst. Is that okay?
Which is hence why I made my argument.
Just clarifying.
Yep, that's all that's about.
Alderman Deuter.
You know, I support the proposed amendment, and I support it. I think we have in the past modified an agreement. I don't know exactly what steps, if it's a new ordinance or just somehow bringing a new agreement forward, but I think there have been times that we modify an existing agreement to address changes like a change in location, that if the city decides it's in its interest, we can enter a new agreement to make it appropriate to the new circumstances. So I support the proposed amendment.
Okay. Any other comments as it relates to the motion to amend before us? Clerk Spencer, I'd ask that you call the roll on the motion to amend. Give me a second. Don, pardon me. Sorry. For the record, motion to amend ordinance O-23-2014, paragraph 7, sentence 1, line 2, removal to a location outside of Elmhurst. Clerk Spencer, please call the vote.
Gutenkauf.
Yes.
Brand.
Aye.
Hipskin.
No.
York.
No.
Levin.
No.
Ely absent. Honquist.
No.
Kennedy.
No.
Mulliner.
No.
Wagner.
No.
Okay. Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn absent. Leader.
No.
Polumsky.
No.
It's 12.
3 ayes, 9 nays, and 2 absent. Oh, that's wrong.
Motion,
No,
3
no,
ayes,
no,
9
no.
nays. Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
That's correct. We have 2 aldermen missing, 12 total here. 3 ayes, 9 nays, motion fails. On to the original motion, approval of the ordinance. Alderman Hipskin. Motion fails on to the underlying main motion. Any other comments or questions as it relates to this ordinance and the motion before us? Seeing none, I'll ask Clerk Spencer to call the roll.
York.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn, absent. Leader.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
Graham.
No.
Hipskin.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Healy, absent. Honquist.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Okay, Gutenkopf.
No.
Right. 10 ayes, 0 nays, no, 10 ayes, 2 nays, 2 absent.
10 ayes, 2 nays, motion to approve ordinance O-23-2014 is approved. On to committee reports and agenda item 7, 7.1, compensation policy. Clerk Spencer, I'd ask you to read the recommendation.
It is therefore the recommendation of the Finance, Council Affairs, and Administrative Services Committee that the city adopt the proposed compensation policy. Signed by Kevin L. York, Chairman, Bob Dunn, Vice Chairman, Marty Deuter, unsigned by Stephen W. Hipskin.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the report and recommendation as read. Motion by Alderman York, second by Alderman Deuter. Alderman York, this is a report out of your committee.
Thank you, Your Honor. The report is, pretty short and sweet. We had an initial review of the consultant's report in February, late February of this year. We had it in our committee at 2 times since then to ultimately draft and approve a compensation policy that's attached to the report. There really hasn't been one in the city of, a compensation policy in the city of Elmhurst, not one that's written. And as everyone here at the dais has heard, this is something that we all believe is an integral part of our city structure, having a policy regarding how employees are paid and what's expected of them and what the pay is based on and all this. So all these things are rolled up into this compensation policy, and we spent quite a bit of time on it at our last committee meeting, kind of making sure that it all made sense from a words point of view. Something that the city manager and city staff can rely on to evaluate employees and set compensation levels and use it as a basis for making determinations on compensation. So we've done quite a bit of work on it. I think it's something that's very valuable for the city, takes a lot of things into account, especially fiscal health of the city at any given time. With the cyclical nature of economy, things are going to be up and down, and this document, I think, does a good job of being applicable in all those situations. So I would ask for your support.
Okay. Any comments, questions as it relates to the compensation study? I'm sorry, the report on the compensation policy. Seeing none, I'll ask Clerk Spencer to please call a roll.
York.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn, absent. Leader.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Hipskin.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Healy, absent. Honquist.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent.
12 ayes, 0 nays, motion carries. Report 7.1 is approved. On to committee report 7.2. Clerk Spencer, I'd ask that you read the recommendation.
Therefore, the Development, Planning, and Zoning Committee recommends that the City Council approve the proposed single-family residential anti-monotony ordinance herein and establish an architectural building commission. The city attorney is hereby directed to prepare the necessary documents for the city council approval. Signed by Scott M. Levin, Chairman, Danny Polumsky, Vice Chairman, unsigned by Mark A. Mulliner, 7th Ward Alderman.
Okay, I'd ask for a motion to approve the report and recommendation as read to put this before the council. Motion by Alderman Levin, second by Alderman Polumsky. Alderman Levin.
Thank you, Mayor. This takes a little bit of explanation. The first part of it being the anti-monotony ordinance came primarily from Alderman Polumsky, and I shared in that concern with respect to new development that might come to town, particularly in light of the former hospital site being vacated and a developer coming in building something on the order of 55 homes. And the concern was, particularly with a prior developer that might not have had as much of a concern for the quality. I'm not saying which developer, I'm just saying any other developer. But the point was to make sure that there was some variety in the housing stock that would go into any kind of development like this. So for the first part, we looked at an existing anti-monotony policy that the city had adopted probably in the early 90s. Our concern at the committee level was that it's a policy, it really doesn't have the force of law. If someone came in and demanded their right to build something that might be deemed monotonous between different structures, that we really didn't have a legal leg to stand on. I consulted with the city attorney, who agreed that it would be better to have an ordinance that spelled it out. In terms of the ordinance itself, and it's a little unusual, I know, because we're actually presenting the ordinance that we're not voting on, but you get more detail to that. So the architectural design and anti-monotony standards really pull largely out of the existing ordinance. We did look at similar ordinances from other communities, and as a result of much discussion decided that our policy was what we wanted, but with the force of law. We made some changes in some of the definitions, such as the definition of an identical, so that would be unambiguous. And the last piece of it on that policy was we felt that there had to be some sort of mechanism for an appeal in case there was a disagreement with the decision made by the building commissioner. So that was the end of part one. And I should say that the reason we adopted this policy is that not only did we feel it had the best policy of those we looked at, but it properly balanced property owners' rights to do that which they would like to do with their property, and the community's concern to make sure that there's not cookie-cutter stock housing. When we looked at where the appeal process should go on this kind of decision, we saw that there was the Architectural Advisory Commission, which had certain duties, hadn't met in quite some time, and that the International Building Code, which we have adopted, calls for a separate building appeal commission, and I'm not sure that those were, I think there was a feeling that we have two commissions or committees that aren't doing much. We're not sure who's on them. If something came along, they should be there to handle an appeal from this ordinance. And in consultation with the mayor, we asked if we should take the lead on revitalizing this, and we essentially then, as you'll see in the second ordinance, combined the Architectural Advisory Commission and the Building Appeal Commission into one body, which the Architectural and Building Commission, we thought it'd be easy to remember, ABC. So it has modifications there. The former Architectural Advisory Commission required that all of the members of the commission had to be architects, landscape architects, building construction, or land use planning professionals, in order to give more flexibility in the event that it's hard to find the full number of people. That way that at least two of them should be people with that level of training. Under the duties in Section 4, we've essentially combined them and specifically noted that this body will serve as the Board of Appeals under the International Building Code as adopted by the city. And although the ordinances are not before you for decision, they flesh out what the substance of the report would be in greater detail.
Okay. Any comments or questions as it relates to this report? Alderman Mulliner.
I just wanted to be known that I did not sign this. I don't support it. First off, it's two reports in one, in my opinion. The ABC committee, I think, is an appropriate thing, or commission is appropriate. The anti-monotony, I don't agree with. I think that what we have is a situation where something's been working for us for years under a policy level. I don't believe we need to change it. One of my concerns revolves around the fact that, to some degree, I think we're taking away some of your homeowners' rights by doing this. If I own a house on a block and somebody sees that house and they decide that they'd like to build a very similar house to that, almost identical to that, basically what we're saying by putting this into an ordinance is, no, you can't do that. You're not allowed to do that. These type of ordinances, when they're typically put in place, are put in place where there's going to be large subdivisions put into place. The only location where we have a potential for a large subdivision is the Nitty property, and we already know that the Nitty property is not going to build houses that are going to be identical to each other. The remaining houses that are being removed at such a slow rate that the variation of the houses is just because of architectural designs being changed over years, and the fact that when they come in, we have a policy that says we don't want houses identical, and those issues have always been able to be worked out between the developer and the individual who is in the building department. So I can't support this the way that it's written. I don't think we have a problem right now. I don't think we need to create an ordinance because we don't have an issue as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. Alderman Braham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This proposed report right now is really near and dear to my heart. I actually made the initial proposal about 10 years ago, and I believe that's what instituted the policy that we're referencing. I know Alderman Mulliner was on the council at that point, and I believe his feelings about the ordinance aspect of it versus the policy aspect still remains true over that duration of time period. But I will challenge that line of thinking because to me, this is everything that I wanted 10 years ago. And I think with the changing of the commissions around as well, I think that consolidates where it needs to be done. But if it's not broke, the philosophy that Alderman Mulliner just pointed out, why fix it? Well, I think Alderman Levin spoke to that, and I think it is relevant where it isn't broke. So essentially, we're just making it an ordinance versus a policy, as we all know from the material that's in front of us tonight. And that essentially gives us the ability to stand up legally in court if it ever came to that point. I think this is great. I'm happy to see it. I know that, about 10 years ago, I've had many conversations with some of the builders in the community about an anti-monotony ordinance back then. I'm glad that everybody seems to be on board and that this seems to be a strong policy and a win-win for everyone. So I definitely support this.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll ask Clerk Spencer to please call the roll.
Levin.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Hipskin.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Healy, absent. Honquist.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner.
No.
Wagner.
Aye.
Butenkoff.
Aye.
Goiter.
Aye.
Dunn, absent. Leader.
Aye.
11 ayes, 1 nays, 2 absent.
11 ayes, 1 nay, motion carries. Report and recommendation 7.2 is approved. On to agenda item 7.3, a report out of DP&Z. Clerk Spencer, I'd ask you to read the recommendation.
Therefore, it is the recommendation of the Development, Planning, and Zoning Committee that the City Council approve the proposed impervious surface regulations for single-family residential properties herein as an amendment to the new single-family home stormwater management ordinance. The city attorney is hereby directed to prepare the necessary documents for the city council approval. Signed by Scott M. Levin, Chairman, Danny Palumsky, Vice Chairman, Mark A. Mulliner, 7th Ward Alderman.
Alderman Levin, a report of your, yes, Alderman Palumsky, or Alderman Levin, you both seem to have your hands up.
I was just gonna make the motion,
Oh,
as
okay.
customary, but.
Yeah, okay, Alderman Levin. Motion to approve the report and recommendation as read. A second?
Second.
You know, I am, okay.
Two second.
I'll second it. You can do what you want to do.
Okay.
Which
Okay, I'm
one?
seconding.
Alderman Mulliner will second. So now, the report and recommendation is before us. Alderman Palumsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to make sure we get this right. This is, it is a very important topic, and I would like to ask that this be sent back to committee to address some details that I think are better addressed in that setting. And I just want to make sure we get it right. So I'd like to ask that we could send it back, please.
We have not discussed the reasons, but I think that the committee will always honor a request for that from our vice chairman, so I will join in, as will Alderman
Okay, so-
Mulliner. We only need two, but
Yeah, well, to pull it back to committee, it's just a courtesy, just pull back your motion.
Point of order?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, you just said it's a courtesy. I thought from previous discussions, the chairman is the only one who can pull it back.
And
Otherwise, it has to go
that's why
through.
I'm addressing the chairman.
well, I don't want to complicate. I thought once it was a motion, it was on the floor. But
And you can pull your motion back if you'd like, and as chairman, request you pull the report back to committee.
I will
And
pull the motion back.
Seconder pulls it back.
I'll pull it
Committee
back to
chairman is
committee.
pulling it back to committee. Okay. That report gets pulled back to committee. Here's the rest of my agenda. 8, reports and recommendations, 8.1, Mayor Morley, I have two reports. Why can't I read one of them? Oh, okay. One is, there was a press release issued today. I'm happy to announce that in cooperation with the Elmhurst Police Department, the city of Elmhurst has established a prescription pill and medication drop box at the police station downtown Elmhurst. This is a service we offer to anybody. There's a couple of ways we ask you to package up your prescriptions, but long and short of it is there is now a safe and secure manner to safely dispose of any prescription drugs you have laying around. Not only does it keep it out of the stormwater system versus dumping it down the sewer, but also it's proven that one of the first steps in addiction is these pills laying around when they shouldn't be. So I would encourage the city of Elmhurst and its residents to take advantage of this service we're now offering. Happy to do so. The other report would be this morning, I'll call it the Mayor's Communication Committee with regard to stormwater, met. We met at the Park District office, and representatives from the Park District and the school board, and then respective city staffs, and also hired engineers were in attendance. We had a what I consider a productive and good conversation. I think we're getting to the point, actually, and there's different concerns coming out of schools versus parks. They're at different thought processes. The parks, I would say, had some conceptual questions, and I'm happy to say that, from my point of view, you know, our engineer is talking to their engineer, and I've yet to hear any disagreement that they have, if anything, clarification about what's been said and what will be expected in the future. So, and I do know that, actually, as a result of the previous meeting about 2 weeks ago with the parks, our engineers got with their engineers and answered a substantial amount of the questions they have, to the point where I believe that, and one of the members of the task force from the park board was asking to bring this to his board for a vote. So I think that's progress. Schools were also there today. They had some questions. I'm happy to report that they didn't have, from my point of view, they didn't have any concerns conceptually with what we were trying to put forward, but they actually requested that we move forward with an intergovernmental agreement so some of the details could be handled out. So city staff is going to be working on that and handing that over. So Parks already has a draft of the intergovernmental agreement to get the ball rolling. Schools have requested that, so I think that's a positive thing. And then Chairman Kennedy, and for anybody else listening, Chairman Kennedy also updated all parties on where the stormwater priorities were in their committee, in his Public Works Committee, and I know it was brought up in the last two committee meetings that Public Works had, that they are moving forward with a priority that they are going to put into a report and send to the City Council for us to consider and potentially approve. And basically what that would do is prioritize a couple of projects with the schools, prioritize a couple of projects with the parks, and then, as I mentioned, one of Park Board representatives asking, let's move this forward, let's put it before us so that we can vote on it. This is really the prompting that's going to do it. It's going to be a report out of committee with some priorities in it, explanation, discussion on City Council, and then probably some sort of a formal request that either mayor or city manager ask those two governmental bodies to consider and give us a vote so that we can move forward, hopefully move forward with spending some serious dollars, the engineering, and moving forward with the projects. So it was a productive meeting. In addition, I think we set the next meeting up 2 weeks from today. So meetings are happening and meetings are being put on the schedule. Questions are being answered, very productive. And I would, that's the end of my report, but I would defer to Alderman Kennedy. Is there anything that I missed from the communications meeting we had this morning?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, you pretty much hit it right on the head. Just to recap, as a committee, we're going to be coming to you ultimately with a report that lays out what we're going to aspire to from a level of protection in terms of the storm years. So is that 50 years, 75, 100 years? The priority order and, just the way we've looked at it, or in my mind, we want to do the most amount of good for the most amount of people for the least amount of cost in the shortest time. And we're looking somewhere in a 7-year time frame based on the financial commitments that we're looking at and how these projects lay out. So that's all stuff we're going to talk about in committee. Just kind of give you, it isn't a guarantee, but that's kind of the way we're looking at things.
Okay, appreciate the update. City Manager Grabowski.
Thank you. I have a few things. First, I'd like to say thanks to the City Council for the support on behalf of all the employees for the compensation policy tonight. We appreciate that. It's been in the works for a while. Thank you. To answer Alderman Bram's question, the end of September, beginning of October is when that project should wrap up. North Avenue Bridge over Salt Creek. And lastly, the Prairie Path is under construction through Elmhurst. The area at the CN tracks, which is between Spring and York, if you recall, 2 seasons ago, the county came in and put gate crossing there. They are now in the process of kind of smoothing that curve out to make it an easier crossing and so that people will comply with the gates. So that detour has been posted since last Friday. We've been working with the county on communicating that out. The construction was supposed to start this week. The detour is through Pioneer Park and onto Villette and then across York at the traffic signal. So just be aware to all the users of the Prairie Path that should be under construction through the fall of this year.
Okay. Any other reports? Alderman Bram.
Yeah, I would just like to request, as I've done in the past, a handful of updates, maybe not tonight, but in upcoming city council meeting. One of which I brought up in the past was the rerouting of airplanes at O'Hare. There's a lot of speculations on why all of a sudden they are not going east-west only anymore, but they're banking north-south and ending up over the city of Elmhurst over the last couple of months. And my speculation, my personal speculation, is once the last and final parallel runway goes in, if this pattern keeps happening, it will be impacting not only northeast and northwest Elmhurst, but the center of town as well. So if I can get an update either tonight or a later meeting for that. Economic development, we had some businesses leave our downtown. I know there's been a lot of discussion about that in social media, et cetera. I was hoping that in one of the upcoming meetings, we can have a presentation or at least some type of update on the health of not only our downtown, but overall City of Elmhurst business climate. I don't know if it's as bad as people believe it is. I actually think it's pretty good in all things considered, but we have had some major businesses leave, so if we can have some type of presentation on that. Thank you, City Manager Grabowski, for the update on the bridge on North Avenue there. It's a little scary that it's going to be that way for the rest of the summer into the fall months. If the city has any creative ways on attempting to reduce that congestion, and I don't know if it's an IDOT run project, I assume it is, yes, and I see some head nods, that maybe something can happen, because it is a mess over there, and it's one of the busiest intersections, I think, anywhere. And then in regards to communication meetings, I appreciate the updates. I was hoping that we can get meeting minutes on some of these meetings. I think I've asked that in the past. If that is not possible for some reason, if we can continue to get updates on these discussions and maybe even post on when these meetings do occur, that would be beneficial. Again, reassuring the public on what is going on, not only by the City of Elmhurst, but by all the government bodies within town. So those are my 4 requests, if you would please indulge me.
Okay, we're going to get back to you on those, Alderman Bram.
Understood.
Any other reports or recommendations? Any other business? Under other business, I would say that, as everyone is aware, we filled the communications position that we were trying to fill, and I would point out that Dan Leahy, Dan, would you raise your hand? Dan is here, and I would ask any member of the City Council or any member of the audience, please, if you want to find out a little bit more about Dan and what he's been doing in the short 2 weeks he's been here, or week and a half, I would encourage you to introduce yourself. So welcome aboard, Mr. Leahy. That having been said, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Motion by Alderman York, second by Alderman Mulliner. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.